Hi gentlemen, welcome to Chapter 7, Respiration in Human. Before I begin a new chapter, let's gain a better appreciation towards the link of this chapter with the previous two. In Chapter 5, we gain a better appreciation towards digestive system, and we learn that large food molecules have to be digested into small soluble molecules in order to be absorbed into the bloodstream for transport. But how does all these nutrients being transported in our circulatory system? That's where Chapter 6, Transport in Human, comes into the picture. Apart from learning the structure of the heart, we also understood how blood rich in nutrients and oxygen are being transported around the body. And not just that, waste products such as urea as well as carbon dioxide are removed. So why are nutrients and oxygen being transported around the body, and where does all these waste products being produced at? So what exactly happens inside the body cells? What happened to the nutrients that are being transported and oxygen taken in, and how are they used in the body cells? And why carbon dioxide and other waste products are being produced in order to be transported and removed? So in the first part of Chapter 7, we would be learning about two types of respiration, aerobic and anaerobic respiration. These two processes help us to better understand what happens to the glucose that are found in the food that we consume, and in the presence of oxygen taken in by our respiratory system and transported around by our circulatory system, how does it help in the process of respiration? I'll be toggling between the slides as well as the notes for you to capture the important concepts that you need to take away by the end of the lessons. So please bear with me as I toggle between both slides as well as the notes. So now, let's pause and think over here. Why do living things respire? Apart from needing energy for movement, excretion, growth, and reproduction, what are some other processes that our body allow to take place that requires energy? Let's pause and put down in the comment, what are some other processes that requires energy inside our body system? So apart from movement, excretion, and reproduction, many cell activity happens in all our living cells, such as cell division, synthesis of new protoplasm for growth and repair, synthesis of protein as well. What are some examples that we have discussed in class so far? Let's just pen it down over here. Hormones, antibodies, and most importantly, enzymes. All these are chemical reactions that requires large amount of energy. Don't forget active transport. Requires a large amount of energy in order to move substances against the gradient. Muscular contraction, as seen in Chapter 6 of the heart, it requires a large amount of energy to beat. And transmission of nerve impulses, which we will dive deeper in the second half of the year. So pause and take down the different processes that are energy consuming in living organism. So the oxygen and food that are taken into our body are being used in respiration in order to release energy. It is used for synthesis, mechanical work in our body, chemical processes as well, growth and repair, and maintaining a constant temperature, especially in warm-blooded animal like us. So what exactly is respiration? Respiration involves the breaking down of food molecule to release energy. There are two types of respiration that I'll be covering in this particular video, aerobic and anaerobic respiration. So, why are there two kinds of respiration, and what are the differences between these two types of respiration? Let's start off with a quick video on what aerobic respiration is.
Respiration is just breathing, right? Wrong. Respiration is the chemical process that supplies the body with energy for all other life processes: growth and repair of cells, muscle contraction, protein synthesis, sending nerve impulses, absorbing molecules, and active transport, to name just a few. It happens in all living cells, not just animal cells, but also plant cells. There are two types of respiration: aerobic and anaerobic respiration. Aerobic means with air, and so needs oxygen, whereas anaerobic respiration doesn't need oxygen. Let's start by looking at aerobic respiration. Aerobic respiration releases energy in cells by breaking down food substances whilst in the presence of oxygen. It is represented by this simplified equation. But don't forget the energy which is released. Glucose is broken down by oxygen to release the byproducts of carbon dioxide and water. Energy is released, which is then used to make a special energy molecule called ATP. ATP is how energy is stored for later use by the body. Aerobic respiration happens all the time in all cells, usually in the mitochondria. Animals get the oxygen needed from the air through their ventilation systems. Plants get their oxygen from the air through the stomata. Do you remember how photosynthesis works? Compare these two equations. You can hopefully see that aerobic respiration works in the opposite way to photosynthesis. Plants produce their food by photosynthesis and then through respiration release energy from it. But don't be confused. Whilst plants do release oxygen as a byproduct of photosynthesis, they don't necessarily take in this oxygen for respiration. They just take in any oxygen from the air. Plants respire throughout the day and night, as do animals, but they only photosynthesize during the day, when there is light available. So this is how aerobic, or with air, respiration works. You just need to remember that glucose is broken down in the presence of oxygen to release carbon dioxide, water, and energy. In the next video, we will have a look at anaerobic respiration and how it differs.
So now let's pause and think. I would like you to leave a comment on one takeaway that you have from the video. It is a very common thing that we hear from people around us that mitochondria is always known as the powerhouse of the cell. But I hope that after learning this lesson, I don't wish to hear from any bio student telling other people that mitochondria is a powerhouse of the cell, because so much more happens in the mitochondria in order to release energy. So why is aerobic respiration so important? All living organisms respire aerobically. because of the large amount of energy that's released through aerobic respiration to support the different life processes that happens inside of us and many other living organisms. So here's a quick summary of what aerobic respiration is. In the video, alright, one thing to take note of is respiration is not the same as breathing. Okay, breathing is just the action of taking in and removing gaseous products in our respiratory system. So what exactly happens in aerobic respiration? Please take down the definition. It's a breakdown of glucose in the presence of oxygen to release a large amount of energy. Right? And in this process, carbon dioxide and water are being released as waste product. You need to know how to write the word equation, but the chemical equation is for your information. Do take note. In the video, energy is labeled as a product that's released in the chemical reaction. However, energy is not a matter. It cannot be labeled as a product, as seen in some videos and textbooks. Instead, there are two ways to show that energy is released in the process of aerobic respiration. One is to put it in a form of the bracket at the end of the equation to indicate that energy is being released. Two, you can write down the word energy on the arrow itself to show that energy is released through the process of aerobic respiration, like how I've done over here. These are the only two acceptable ways to show that energy is released. Right? So please do take note of this. Unfortunately, there's a limit to how much oxygen that you can take in, because there's only so much capacity our lungs have to take in oxygen, and we can only breathe that fast, that high limit, during vigorous activity. So what happens when your body reaches its maximum aerobic respiration? Okay, it can no longer take in even more oxygen to break down the glucose in your body to release energy. So what do you think your body do then? This is where I introduce anaerobic respiration to you to find out a little bit more about how the energy requirement is being met beyond what aerobic respiration can offer. So now let's take a look at this video to understand what anaerobic respiration is.
Ever wondered why you feel all stiff the day after doing lots of exercise? Well, this video will explain why, but first let's try a little experiment. Put your left hand as high above your head as you can, stretch your fingers towards the sky as far as you can, and then clench your fist as tight as you can. Now I want you to keep doing that throughout the whole of the video if you can. Stretch and clench, keep going. In order for you to contract your muscles, they need the energy that is released in respiration. However, when you're doing heavy exercise for a long time, the muscles can't always get the oxygen they need to carry out aerobic respiration. In this case, the muscle cells can switch to carry out another type of respiration called anaerobic respiration. This is respiration without oxygen. So why don't we just do this respiration all the time if we don't need oxygen? Then we don't need to bother breathing. Well, unfortunately, anaerobic respiration is not as good as aerobic. Firstly, it only produces a small amount of energy compared with aerobic respiration, and also it produces a nasty waste product called lactic acid. So, how is your arm feeling now? It's probably started to ache. The muscles in your forearm which control the fingers are now carrying out anaerobic respiration. After a while, the lactic acid will start to build up in the muscles and it causes pain. You can stop now if you like, or maybe carry on to the end of the video if you're as hard as nails. When you stop exercising, you will need to break down this lactic acid. To do this, the lactic acid needs to travel in the blood to the liver. Here, it is broken down using oxygen into carbon dioxide and water. After vigorous exercise, you may find you are still breathing very heavily for a time afterwards. This is to get the oxygen into the blood needed to break down the lactic acid. We say, after doing anaerobic respiration, that you're in oxygen debt, that you need to pay back the oxygen to the body. So to answer the question at the start of the video, why do you feel stiff after exercise? It's all to do with lactic acid. If you stop moving straight after exercise, then the blood does not return to the liver and the lactic acid stays in the muscles. This is what makes them stiff the next day, so it's very important to warm down after exercise with a gentle jog and stretching. Okay, you can really put your arm down now.
Same thing, after watching this video, I'd like you to write down one thing you learned from this video about anaerobic respiration. Alright, let me break down what anaerobic respiration is. So imagine, alright, you are running a 2.4. Okay, at the start it was very comfortable, you can still talk to your friend, chit chat, but as you progress through the race, you find that you're panting, you're trying to take in more oxygen, and then your body start aching. Some people even get stitches, alright? And then at the end of 2.4, you give your final burst of, energy. Where does it exactly come from, that final burst of energy you get to run to the finish line? And why do you continue to pant after the 2.4 run, even when you're done with your test? So this is where I bring in anaerobic respiration. So anaerobic respiration, alright, is also the breakdown of glucose, but instead in the absence of oxygen. When oxygen cannot reach your cells in order for aerobic respiration to take place, but your body needs energy. Your body craves for more energy to meet the growing demand. Okay, so anaerobic respiration will happen. Okay, and it will release a small amount of energy to just meet the demand that your body is craving for. And instead of carbon dioxide and water, lactic acid is formed instead. So why do you feel pain? Why do you feel so tired after a vigorous exercise that you had? And sometimes it only kicks in the next day. It's because of lactic acid. Right? This is what causes pain and fatigue in your body. And too much is not good. Alright, too much is really not good. You might heard about rhabdo. Okay, this condition called rhabdo, when you overstretch your body and then your body releases too much lactic acid that is unable to remove it quickly, alright, causing a more severe condition in your body, and sometimes it requires medical treatment as well. So what is the word equation for anaerobic respiration? Simple. Alright, simple, because oxygen is not required, glucose is the only reactant, and lactic acid together with a small amount of energy release are together with a small amount of energy release. Alright, I almost wanted to say that energy is a product, but instead energy is released through the process itself. So same thing, two ways of writing the word equation. One seen over here, and the other way of writing the word equation for anaerobic respiration is to label the word energy on the arrow itself to indicate that energy is released as glucose is broken down into lactic acid. Okay, And this happen, okay, take note, take note. The muscle cells carry out anaerobic respiration, all right, when there is a shortage of oxygen, okay, but it happen simultaneously with aerobic respiration. So imagine your body, okay, your body aerobic respiration, okay, can only give you 10 units of energy. All right, this is from aerobic respiration. But let's say in a marathon, all right, you need another few units of energy. You need a total of 12 units of energy, and this is where aerobic respiration kicks in. All right, so it happens, okay, simultaneously. Okay, so a better way to show this, let's use an example over here. Imagine you are this boy over here, all right? So at the start of the race, all right, at the start of your marathon 2.4, like what I said, okay, your muscles first use oxygen to respire aerobically, okay? This is because, right, this is because a large amount of energy is released, okay, to meet the needs in your muscles, right? But as you progress, you can feel the difference in your body. Your breathing rate increases to take in oxygen quickly. You are taking in deeper breath as well, and you are breathing much faster. So in terms of speed and volume, all right, there is an increase, okay, thanks to your respiratory system. And on the other hand, your heart beats so much faster to transport oxygen to the rest of the body, okay? But at a certain point, right, when you hit the limit to the maximum rate of breathing and maximum rate of heartbeat, right, but your body still needs more energy. So this is where anaerobic respiration kick in together with aerobic respiration to meet the needs of the energy in your body. All right, and here comes another phrase to take note of. The muscle then incur oxygen debt. What exactly is oxygen debt? I'll come back to it in a bit, all right, once I'm done wrapping up anaerobic respiration. So, right, this is for your information. Anaerobic respiration can also take place in another living organism, the yeast. All right, and this is how beer and bread are being produced with the help of the yeast. So what happens, right? Why is yeast used, okay, in the production of beer and bread? Let's look at a video to understand a little bit more. Alright, so let's take a look at this picture over here. Three different bottles. The first contain 1 teaspoon of yeast. The second contains yeast and sugar, which are very common ingredient that you use to make beer as well as bread. And then the last bottle has 2 teaspoons of sugar and 1 teaspoon of yeast. Same thing. Let's pause and make our own prediction. All right, what will you observe in this experiment? What will happen to the yeast, right, in each of the bottle, and what will you see as an outcome? All right, let me reveal the answer using this video over here. if you predict that the balloons are inflated, you are absolutely right. Alright, so this is because the sugar is being broken down by yeast into ethanol as well as carbon dioxide. Alright, so as compared to anaerobic respiration in our body, alright, let me just write down the equation on top. So in human, right, in human, during anaerobic respiration, okay, glucose is being broken down into lactic acid, alright, releasing a small amount of energy. Alright, this happens in human. Yeast produces two different products instead, ethanol as well as carbon dioxide. So what helps to inflate the balloon? It's the release of carbon dioxide that helps to inflate the balloon. So yeast is a common ingredient together with sugar that is used in alcohol fermentation. Alright, and what gives it the alcoholic nature, the very fizzy, bubbly drink that we see bottled up in cans, it's due to the presence of alcohol as well as carbon dioxide that is produced during alcoholic fermentation. So anaerobic respiration is a step involved in alcoholic fermentation. Alright, nothing beats a quick video to appreciate how beer is made. I know you guys can't drink it yet, but nothing is going to stop us from learning a little bit more about how it's produced and appreciate from a biology and chemistry perspective.
For a beer, gather all the ingredients, hops, grain, and yeast. Grind the grain, add tap water and half a Campton tablet to a kettle. Heat the water to 150 degrees Fahrenheit. Stir in the grain. Maintain temperature for 60 minutes, then pull the grain basket. Bring the liquid to a boil and add hops according to the recipe directions. After a 60-minute boil, cool the liquid to roughly 70 degrees Fahrenheit. Sanitize the fermentation equipment and transfer the liquid into the fermenter. Add yeast, install an airlock after aeration, and store for a week at room temperature. After that, transfer to bottles, mix with priming sugar, seal, and store at room temperature for 1.5 weeks before completing the most important part, which is to...
Alright, so yes, the video stops right here, which is to enjoy the beer after it's being produced. So, my next question is, before I reveal, alright, yeast is also used in bread making. So, my question to you is, what happens to the ethanol? Is bread alcoholic? You know, leave your response in the question below. So, those who mentioned that the alcohol escapes during bread making, you're absolutely right, alright, because of the high temperature, the alcohol boils off during baking process, so the bread that we are consuming are not alcoholic in nature at all. Alright, so for your information, here's the word equation for yeast anaerobic respiration. It's optional, not part of your syllabus, but I think it's good to know as well. Where else anaerobic respiration happens and what is the difference between yeast versus living cells. Alright, so please take down. And I'll end the first video over here. In the next video, we'll understand a little bit more about what oxygen depth is and how is it being paid back.